Hello, everybody. Today we're talking about association, like who do you associate with, and how does that determine how your life is going to go? We're going to look at some scatter plots today and determine how these scatter plots are going to go, especially when we're talking about a line of best fit. So I'm just going to go ahead and throw a couple of scatter plots here together. We're going to go with that. And we're going to go with those. Okay, cool. So I'm going to change color so I can draw some line of best fits here. But when we're talking about the association of a scatter plot, like how is it associated? How are all the points connected with each other? So think about if you drew your line of best fit. The first thing that you want to talk about is what is the direction that it's headed. So we can tell that that first one is obviously headed in a positive direction, right? This one is not as close or as tight or as good of a line of best fit, but it's still positive in the middle there. We can look at the next two, and clearly we can see that the general trend of those next two is negative. So the direction is one thing that we can talk about, and those would be negative. It doesn't matter if it's a really good line of best fit or if it's just loosely connected, it's generally headed in the negative direction. And then for the last one, some people like to call this none. Some people like to call it zero. I think you can see that that's like a slope of zero, or like I wouldn't really draw a positive or a negative line. So I can say that there's really no direction to that, or the direction might be zero. So the first thing I want to look at when I'm just describing a scatter plot is which way is it headed? You know, is it positive, negative, or there doesn't seem to be any trend when we are looking at those lines. Okay. The next thing what we're going to look at is the strength, right? So I had some points here, right? And I have some points here. And I'm going to go with some points there. And some points there. And for the last one, let's go with that and that. Okay. Cool. Again, I'm going to switch colors so I can talk about that line of best fit. So we already talked about direction. So we know that if we look at all the top ones all look positive, right? They all look positive, generally positive. But we wouldn't all say that these are similar. So we want to talk about it as positive for the direction. And next thing we want to talk about is like how strong is it? Like what is the strength? So I would say that this first graph is very strong in the positive direction. All those points are very close to the line of best fit. Like we would all pretty much draw the same line of best fit, right? In the middle, I'd say that's moderate, you know, like we're pretty close to the line, but there's a few outliers or a few that are spread apart. And the last one, like it's definitely positive, but I don't know, your line of best fit is probably different from mine. So like I would say that is a weak association. So again, all of these are positive. So I have a positive strong connection. I have a positive moderate, and I could have a positive weak graph. And the same is going to apply when we go to look at the graphs that are on the bottom. They're all negative, but they're different kinds of negative, right? So this first one is negative and very strong. Like all those points pretty much hit that line of best fit. There's just missing just barely a couple of them, right? The next one is negative, but it's moderate. Those points are a little bit off of the line, and that's okay. It's still a good line of best fit. And the last one's negative, but it's a little more on the weak side. Like we definitely have some outliers down here, and you know they're not exactly on that line of best fit. So we can describe association two ways: the direction that it's headed, positive, negative, or zero, and then we can describe the strength of it. Is it strong, really close to that line of best fit? It's moderate, pretty close, or it's weak, like they're loosely connected to the line of best fit. And we have something else that could show up in our last one. So there's a third way that we could start to describe association, and that would be the shape, right? So here's some data, and here's some data, and here's some data. Cool, so we're gonna go ahead and talk about all these now with all three ways that we know. So it looks like they all seem to be positive, right? And let's see, I don't know, what kind of shape, right? It looks like we might have like a different shape to these. So like that one looks pretty linear. This one looks like a curve. And this one has a different type of curve. So while they're all, ending positive and trending upwards, they definitely have different shapes. So we want to talk about the shapes here. The first one's going to be a positive linear graph. That for sure is looking like a linear line. The next one is this upward curve, and we've talked about that in the last chapter, is exponential. Right? That's when you're multiply, or dividing. And then the last one is what's called a quadratic graph. And you might know that in a couple of different ways. You might know that a quadratic graph is in the shape of a parabola, or you might know that the equation for that is x squared. And if not, no worries. But there's definitely different families that they could belong to. So we sometimes call that the shape or the family that it belongs to. So let's go ahead and sum it up. So the first thing that we talked about, positive, negative, or none, that would be talking about our direction. What is the direction of the data? What is the direction that the data is headed? The next thing is how strong that is. What is the strength? Is it strong? Is it moderate? Or is it weak? So we can talk about positive graphs all three ways. We can talk about negative graphs all three ways. And we can even talk about graphs that are not positive or negative in all three ways. And then the last thing would be what is our shape? What family does it belong to? But what's the shape of the graph? Is it linear? Is it nonlinear? And as we get to nonlinear, you're going to learn that there's some other ways that we could describe that. You'll even learn some more things in different algebra classes or algebra 2 as you go on. All right, so association, graphs, data, line of best fit. We can describe the direction that it's heading. We can describe the strength and how strong or weak it is. And then we can also describe the shape, because not everything is linear. So that is our lesson on association and how we can associate some vocab words to our graphs and our scatter plots and our lines of best fit.